Well, hey guys, welcome to the Next Man Up podcast. I am your host, Mark Stanifer, and I'm honored to be with you for another episode. And joining me once again, John Gregory. Good to have you back on the mic, my friend.
Good to be back. G2.
G4. It's always good when we get a chance to do this, and I look forward to these conversations. And some of what's going to unfold we have planned, and some we don't. So organic, excited to see what happens. That's one of the things I enjoy about this medium and this conversational process is you never quite know what's going to come up.
Yeah. So, well, you got to be ready because you just never know. So
that's right.
I hope you're ready, Mark.
Well, I'm never fully ready with you, but that's okay. You keep me on my toes.
All right.
Okay, so I want to start with this question today. Obviously, we're going to get into the broader topic of identity, but I want to take you and me back to when we were younger. And I'm curious, what were the things in your life that when you were younger that really kind of gave you meaning or defined you back then when you were a youngling?
Yeah, the easy answer to that is, we were preachers' kids, but that's sort of general. For me personally, I would say, as boring, as nerdy as this sounds, my schoolwork, getting good grades.
Hold on. Academic was like your focus?
Oh, yeah. As a kid?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
Sorry to shock you right off the bat, but yeah, it was academics, and I was a little jerk that got everything done early and all of that stuff. But I mean, it was my identity as a kid, and really through I won't tell too many stories, but through probably my junior year of high school, just keeping those grades was my identity. The other one was when I discovered that I was a decent pianist at age 11 or 12. So suddenly, I had a new identity, and forever, I was known as a musician. So that was the other identity when I was young.
So for me, what comes to mind immediately, although you've jogged a few more, is sports. And particularly baseball. Baseball was with me, as you know, all the way into college. But there were other sports as well. Basketball, I played a bunch. Football, I tried once. But leisurely other sports like golf and tennis, never competitively. But baseball, competitively from the time I was 6, probably, and even before then, a couple years before then. All the way into college. And one of the stories that I'll share here in a little bit, it does involve baseball and hanging up those cleats and putting that aside. But for me, it was sports and just performing well. Although I was never a star, I was pretty good and wanted to be good. The other one that you made me think of was school as well. Although for me, it was less about defining me and more about following the rules and just the performance aspect of it. I kind of need these grades in order to feel validated or valuable. And I'm a rule follower to begin with, but for the most part, it was sports, and particularly baseball that really, I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back on it, had used that or let that define me so significantly.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. We have no idea that's what we're doing when we're 11. We have no idea that that's what we're doing.
Right.
Of course, now I could, even hearing you say that about schoolwork, I now know I'm hugely task oriented. And I won't go into too much detail, but the Christian school setting and the curriculum and so forth that we utilize, this is in the 70s, it was very task oriented. And so I was in, glory land, whatever you want to call it. I
Right in
was
your
just
sweet
like,
spot.
yeah, just, check it out, check it out, check it out. And so I don't know that I would say it was validation. I mean, sure, there's a little bit of validation in that, but I just love getting tasks done.
Mm.
So I didn't know that's what I was doing as far, being able to use those words, but now I know that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm not going to jump ahead too much, but just sort of foreshadowing where we could go here. It's interesting how our strengths
Mm-hmm.
can get warped into defining who we are.
No doubt.
That strength of being able to execute and accomplish and get things done that's served you significantly well in your personal and professional pursuits, but to an extreme or
Mm-hmm.
without a healthy check or governor on it, it can become the way you define yourself.
Mm-hmm. And even the way that I define others,
Mm.
because I can create that same expectation of people, and that's not healthy,
Mm.
particularly if they're not task-oriented people. And I'll drive both of us crazy if I keep in that zone of we got to get the task done, just buckle down and let's get this done.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time and place for that, but if that's all you do, you're missing the boat.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought I had a good idea of who I was. And for the most part, I think I did through the majority of my adult years. But it's really been in the last 5 or 6 that I've gotten deeper into it and saw some of where I was drifting in the past and have been able to get a little bit more grounded in where I am now and who I am now. But as you look back, and I'll share some of mine here after you,
Mm-hmm.
but as you look
Mm-hmm.
back on your history, what are some of those events or markers or decisions that helped you to really narrow in on who you are?
Mm-hmm. So I would sort of, well, I had a choice, I guess I should say, when I was a teenager of who really was going to define me or how all the questions, how it's going to be identified. I was forced into that with the fact that my dad's passing sort of forced that on me to some degree. So I've not necessarily been one that had to struggle terribly much with identity. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase that. Struggle with shifting it or releasing some identity. Some are harder than others. So the first one I would say was when I was in college. I was a music major, and if you're a music major, you had to choose proficiencies, and they call them different things in different programs. But so when I entered, I was a piano proficiency major. My second proficiency was voice. And after my freshman year, even though I'd passed exams and so forth that you had to do to continue in the program, I was incredibly stressed and did not see finishing a 4-year degree with that order.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went back my sophomore year, I announced that I was switching my proficiencies because I could do that. And boy, did I piss off my piano professors.
Oh, wow.
Because they were not happy.
How dare you do that to us?
Yeah. And I heard it, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not identified by being a pianist anymore. Yeah, sorry. And that led me down it gave me the ability, I should say, or the courage, whatever the word is, to make those kind of decisions moving forward as well. So a couple more in my 20s. Um, a big deal was to leave the church denomination that I had
Mm-hmm.
grown up in as a
Mm-hmm.
preacher's kid. That was a big deal. No longer being identified with that. When I was in my late 20s, the biggest one I would say for me, this is too long for us to get into, but I had fought saying yes to God to go into pastoral ministry work. I had fought that, and I didn't want that identity. I was like, nope, I ain't doing that one. But when I finally gave in and said yes, man, what a change.
Mm.
Just all over everything about me, but certainly in my spirit, it was a change. And we can get into that a little bit. But that was the most significant identity marker in my life.
It's interesting how many of them cluster around the college
Mm-hmm.
and early adult age. Some of that is true for me as well. As I think about getting clearer and clearer on who I am, separate and apart from the things that I do and the
Mm-hmm.
roles that I play, and that's kind of what we're getting at here, at least at a big picture view. For me, I had to quit things, and so the first was between freshman or going into sophomore year in college. I quit baseball, and I think my coach was pretty upset, although he did all right without me. I didn't hear it quite like your piano teachers
Mm-hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
gave it to you, but I had to quit baseball, and that was hard. And it was something that I wanted because I wanted what was on the other side of that. But what I wrestled with is, well, who am I without baseball? Because
Mm-hmm.
it had been with me for 18 years at that point, almost. So
Mm-hmm.
that was big. It was, and it was coming at some point. I wasn't going to play beyond college. I just made the intentional decision a few years early. So that was one. Another one is quitting religion. It's probably the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, you've heard my story for the most part, and you know that I've been a faithful Jesus follower. But for a long period of that time, it was really driven out of this obedience and kind of a fear-based, performance-based routine at the heart of it. And when I saw that, I realized that's not what I want. That's not what I've been going for. Somehow I got here and I need to get away from that. And so I had to quit that. But what happened in the process is I had to let go of the performance aspects of of religion, if you will, that I thought were defining markers in my spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
The participation in this and the giving in
Mm-hmm.
that and the attendance of that over there. Like I had to think about it in a way that wasn't so quantifiable, and I had to quit religion. And that for me was in my middle 30s. And then 6 years ago, I quit the career in the corporate America. And although I could have told you at the time, I am not what I do, I still had to get over the fear of, if not that, then who? And you guys might remember we did an episode on fear 205 a few weeks back. Like part of the learning process here is getting past that thing that you identify with and the fear that holds you back from seeing it in a different way. For me, quitting baseball, quitting religion, and quitting corporate America.
All right. So I'm going to say this just because there's probably a listener out there. It's probably the smaller fraction of listeners percentage. But I tend to be the guy that sees the need to quit before God says it's time. And you said wrestling. I'm like, dude, the wrestling that God and I have done a lot has been like, I'm done with this. Can I move on? And like my identity here, I'm my hands are done. I'm ready to move on, and he's not ready for me to move on.
The assignment's
That's
not
a
over.
different. Say it again.
The assignment's not over yet.
Yeah, right. And so that's a whole nother animal to talk about. But for those who may sit in that, you're not alone. There are others of us in that space.
Yeah. You know, it seems like maybe a good time here in this conversation to just kind of clarify, like, okay, you guys are 15 minutes in, you're talking about identity, but what do you really mean? And I think at least one aspect of what we're talking about is realizing that we are more than what we do. We're more than our performance. We're more than our successes or our failures. We're more than the titles that we carry, the roles that we play, the wealth that we've accumulated, the things that we own. Obviously, I can see you shaking your head. The audience can't. But like at a big picture, the way I sometimes think about it, John, is a capital I identity. Those are components of our experiences and they help to shape us. But if you were to strip all of those away, you would realize they don't fully define who we are. They are not our full identity. And so when I talk about getting to who I am, it is separate and apart from my relationships, my jobs, the things that I enjoy doing. It's getting grounded in that immutable truth of I have value, I have worth, because God the Father created me and he said so.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to go here in my brain, but here's where my brain just went listening to you, Mark. I have sat in way more memorial services, funeral services than the average person, just because of my pastoral experience and music abilities. And I just had this thought. No matter how many you've gone to, when someone stands up and shares about the person that passed, they sure, they talk about what they did, but when you get the best content and the most emotion from them, it's not about, how many years they worked at so and so place or what awards they may have won. It's about who they were and what their values were and how they connected with people. The relationship that was built and how they lived out their integrity. Those kinds of things are what people want to remember. And it's what they remember.
Yeah.
More so than what you did. And, and on a sort of somber note, the fact that that person's gone doesn't mean those things aren't going to get done anymore, what they used to do. I mean, you retire, somebody's going to take your chair, get over it.
That's right.
It's just, so the idea that we struggled with these things, it's natural, but to get beyond the idea that I've got to live up to my own expectations or somebody else's expectations through some title or certain status, man, that's not what people are going to remember when you're not here anymore. That's not what they're going to remember.
You're right on. And yet this is such a hard thing for guys to get, because we're so we're wired to act. We're driven to do and to perform. And I think in many ways that's a healthy thing. It's part of the it's part of this, and maybe this is stereotypical, but it's part of the gender difference between male and female. We're just wired to do and to move and decide, but that doesn't define who we are. The things that we do ultimately don't define us. And if you want proof of that, then talk to the guy who's just been fired, who's walking on down the sidewalk just completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or
Yeah.
the athlete that's been sidelined because of an injury or because of someone coming behind him that was just a little bit better. And what are they thinking and feeling in that moment? Who am I? What value do I have? And I don't mean to downplay our contributions
Yeah,
through
sure.
profession or through athletics or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of who we are and the gift that we can bring to our world. But when we let that define us, we miss out on the bigger picture of who we are, and it really comes to roost when that thing is gone, when it's taken away or we lose it, is when this really drives home.
Yep. I agree. I'm thinking about a friend of mine who I wouldn't say he's had an identity crisis per se. I don't think he would even label it that. That's what he's had to walk through. That's just not who he is. But there's a lot of guys who could not live the life he's lived because his wife is the main breadwinner, and he's pretty much home doing typically what in a lot of families the wife does, raising the kids pretty much while she's at work, kind of deal. And I'm just, I don't know, I'm just thinking about that for a second for him. But he's never gotten lost to that or been irritated by that or thought things were backwards or whatever. And it's a testament to that his identity is not in what he does.
Mm. Or in the cultural definition of
Mm-hmm.
what a man should be, you
Correct.
know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, he works, just not as much,
Right.
all that kind of thing. But it's not the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had this conversation with others before, and there's another aspect of identity that sometimes I refer to as the little I identity,
Mm-hmm.
where we can choose to be a certain person, certain qualities or certain characteristics that are valuable to us that we choose to be about. Again, it's not getting lost in performance.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, it is, I want to be a man of integrity, or I
Mm-hmm.
want to be a man of character, or I want to be someone who is physically fit. It's important to me. And so I will pursue those things even when I don't feel like it, because these are my standards. This is what I want to adhere to. This is how I want to live my life. This is my identity statement. I am a man of physical fitness, whatever that is, fill in the blank. So I think there's space and room in this identity conversation for us to be able to say, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is the type of person, the things I want to be about, but still not wrapped up in the title and the accomplishment and the performance, rather standards,
Mm-hmm.
characteristics, qualities that I want to aspire to. Does that make sense? You follow me?
I am, however, I want to dig in here because you and I haven't had this conversation. So I'm wondering if what's going on in my head is what you're saying, that sort of like the big eyes are your positions in life, such as husband, dad, uh, you're still a son, whatever those big eyes are. And then the little eyes that you're talking about, I'll use the language, it's how you are the big eye. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that the right image there, or is it not? Am I off base with
Maybe
that?
maybe we need a third eye, which isn't possible because we only have English only gives us capital and lowercase, right?
Well, you got me, myself, and I.
Okay.
Does that work?
I'm probably not in this context. But maybe the biggest view would be the who that you are, regardless of circumstances, regardless of roles you play or the positions that you fill. the thing that doesn't change, whether we're aware of it or not. It's discovering that thing that doesn't change. God says, "You are my son."
Mm-hmm.
That's really unchangeable because
Mm-hmm.
it's not dependent or influenced by what we do. It's a gift that is part of who we are. But then underneath that, what you're saying is we play, and this is how I tend to think about it, we play certain roles in life.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
role of a husband or a father or a manager or a fill in the blank. And in those, we can sometimes get lost and think, oh, this is who I am,
Mm-hmm.
without that bigger picture view. And then, as we were talking, more the how you play those roles, how you show up in life, how you interact with people or do the things that you do, gets to, I want to be a man of fill in the blank. Integrity comes to
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Mm-hmm.
The little I identity of the things that I choose to be about because of how I'm wired and the values that are important to me. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I've worked with coaching clients, we use the word values a
Mm-hmm.
lot, right? So I hear that as the values that identify who I am. And, my chosen values that I want to pursue, maybe, well, they are different from you
Sure.
and, the next guy. Um, but they're the ones that I identify with and that I feel God has um, wired me to be, given me the passion and experiences to go after those particular values and be those things. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I could even see where someone could flip it, you know, just to give a different viewpoint here. I could see where someone could say, well, maybe those are the big eyes and these roles are influenced by those, just flip that order.
Yeah.
I could see where someone could choose to have that viewpoint as well.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not mine, but it could be somebody's.
Well, part of this is being being flexible and playing with ideas and
Yeah,
coming to
right.
some conclusions on your
Mm-hmm.
own. And part of it also is being willing to even think about, who am I without? If
Yeah.
I didn't have this, who am I? And because that's such a big problem for guys, I'm sure that there are guys listening that are either haven't thought about it, or it is creating some discomfort to even think about it now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. I've spent all this time and energy building up this role or this position, this thing that I think defines me. And Mark, John, you're telling me it doesn't? And what do I do with that? Like, what do I do now as a result of coming to this conclusion?
You're voicing a fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're voicing a fear. And there's a lot of ways to talk about how we address our fears. Um, so I'll go down one of them. The idea that you could draw back from some other fear that you've addressed at some point, whatever that was. The first time you said, I love you to your girlfriend, it's like, holy crap, what's going to happen now that I just said that? Whatever. Um, there's, there is so much growth that could happen when we choose to be uncomfortable.
Mm,
Man, it's hard, that first little step, but you've done it before somewhere. You've taken those kind of steps before. So the example, Mark, of you, just 5-6 years ago, making the big shift that you made, that was loaded with fear.
yep.
But I know you well enough to know that you don't regret it at all,
Not a bit.
not a bit. So the benefit of acknowledging the fears there, not dismissing it, just acknowledging it's there, and finding ways and people and spiritual avenues to help deal with that fear if God's telling you it's time to shift, whatever that shift is, or to let go of an identity. All of these kind of different things that may be going around in somebody's brain and heart. Um, it doesn't mean it's a no. It means there's a possible direction here that if I'm willing to follow and surrender, I have no idea what's coming, but it's probably going to be pretty damn good.
So I'm picturing a beautiful house,
Mm-hmm.
and the house doesn't have very many windows. Even the windows that it does are not, they're more to let light in, not to be able to see out of. But this house on the inside is beautiful, and it's been well maintained and constructed and built up to where it is for a long period of time. And what we're asking guys is to step out the door of the house and take a look at the landscape and the scenic view that is in front of you. And don't be so tied to the house anymore. Not that you can't go back and enjoy the house,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
but there's more. You just got to step out the front door.
So I'm sure you remember the book, The Prayer of Jabez.
Mm-hmm.
That just comes to my mind as I hear you describe that. Because one big aspect of that prayer and the teaching of that book is to actually ask God to expand your territory.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
So that could be a fearful prayer. And sometimes you pray and like, I don't know why I just said that, because I don't know that I really want that. But that's all in what we're talking about. How much of you and your life really is yours, and how much are you saying is not mine? And I'm going to let God have my identity and all these things.
Wow, man, there's so many, like we opened up so many loops just in this conversation that we could go down, and for the sake of time, we won't. But there are lots of things that we could come back to and visit in future conversations. But I think to begin to put a bow on this one, like just asking that question, what can you do? Let me offer a couple of thoughts, and then you can jump in as well. First of all, it is being willing to look yourself in the eyes and say, I think I've been using this to define who I am. The title that I have, the clothes that I wear, the car that I drive, the wife that I have, or even things that could be good, like I am a really, really good father here and I'm doing everything well and right, and I can identify with that as a misrepresentation of really who I am. But look at yourself and be willing to be honest with yourself and see places where you have used titles, roles, positions, accumulation to represent who you are. And then allow that awareness to begin to settle in on, okay, if I've let that define me, who am I without that? Or maybe said a different way, what about me changes if I don't have that? And you know, whatever that is for you, it can get obviously very contextualized. But if you can get to those things that don't change about who you are, then you're getting to that bedrock upon which you can be firmly grounded and then go into those roles or those responsibilities or those other places without having to get who you are from them, but to be able to give fully of who you are based on what's needed. Couple of my thoughts. What would you add to that, John?
Well, one, a verse just came to my mind as I was listening to you, and it's Paul's statement, I have learned to be content. And he fills in the blank there. But and that's a journey. But if that's a verse that you can meditate on and do some journaling or talk to some other guys about, I'm on the journey of contentment. Man, that's got a lot of good fruit in that conversation. Lyrics of songs speak to me. I think they do to everybody. And several songs come to my mind right now that I think can help someone sort of speak into their life by listening to lyrics of songs. Who You Say I Am is one of them. And the other one is No Longer Slaves. I mean, just the title alone, man, we could have an episode about that.
Yep.
But in the middle of that, I think it's the bridge of that song. There's the affirmation, I am a child of God, in the middle of that. So just things like that reiterate to you who you really are, I think is valuable. And final thought, I would say, back to that fear thing, God knows your fears. He knows, he created you. He knows your tendencies. He knows what freaks John Gregory out. And the opportunity we have with these fears is to give him the opportunity to prove to us how good of a father he is. Like we want to be to our own kids, trust him with those, and do what Jesus said. If you can trust yourself to be a good father, think how well you can trust your heavenly Father.
That's right.
So your fear can be trusted to your heavenly Father.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So guys, I don't know that I've ever made this offer or done this before on the podcast. If I have, it's been a while and I can't recall. But John and I both, in other work that we do, help people to be grounded in who they are. John referenced it earlier. I do some of the same work around identity. If what we've been talking to you about today, or what we've been talking about today, has really resonated with you and you're interested in pursuing more in a professional coaching relationship, let me just invite you to hit us up at our website, Let me just invite you to email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. And one of us will reach out to you. If this is speaking to you, and believe me, John and I both know how hard this is to do on your own, without a partner, without a guide, someone who's even got some training in this. If you are interested in that, then just reach out to us and hit us up at feedback@thenextmanup.com, and we'll make sure we get in touch with you. Well, dude, I've already got a bunch of ideas that of places to go that this conversation has spurred. And so as soon as we turn the recording off, I'm going to be frantically scribbling some notes. But thank you for germinating some of those ideas, for bringing your own stories. And as I always say, I do appreciate the collaboration and what you offer here.
Well, while you doodle, I'm going to eat some ice cream.
That sounds more fun, but I need to get these thoughts down. So let's go each to our own ways. And listeners, we will be back, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Until then, adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanifer at Jacob Stanifer Music, and this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.